Hello lovely people, my name is Emma and today I'm doing my wrap up from my 5-star predictions video from now nearly a year ago. So first of all, excuse the headphones, I've got a little bit of a cold at the moment and it's causing a real big earache on this side, and the pressure of these fluffy things really helps just kind of cancel that out. Please ignore these and hopefully I'm not hollering at you and I can fix the sound in post. So back, it was February last year, I did a video which a lot of people have been doing. I don't know who did the original one, but it's basically making predictions about possible 5-star reads off my shelf, and I did it for a load of fiction. I will link the original video down below, and I also have a non-fiction one now which I'll also link down below. But I've now reached a stage where I've either read or DNF'd every book that was in that video, so now I want to do a wrap up for you to talk about whether my predictions were correct or not, and then in the next week or two there will be another 5-star predictions video coming out that I'm going to film after this. So I only actually DNF'd one book off the entire list, and I'm going to talk about that one first and then talk about how my predictions went for the other ones. The book I have DNF'd is The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. It's a real shame because I was so hyped about this one, and the reason why I thought it was going to be 5-star was because basically it's a high fantasy. I think it's Native American Indian inspired. It's supposed to be very, very exciting and good. It's been linked to like Game of Thrones before, but basically I'm not in a high fantasy mood, and I honestly haven't been in a high fantasy mood for comfortably over a year now. So at the time when I bought this, I really thought I was going to be reading more things that would be classed as high fantasy. I have a few on my shelf still from that kind of era, and then realistically it's just not a style of book that I personally am enjoying at the moment. There's a lot of world building in it that I find quite tiring to get my head around, and it's something that I'm not very invested in making that time or effort for. So for now I have officially classed this as DNF'd. I tried to pick it up about 3 times. It's been on multiple TBRs. I maybe got 2 or 3 chapters when I kind of got the furthest through it, and it's not holding my attention, which means I don't want to force myself to continue with it knowing full well that it's definitely not going to be a 5-star read because I'm forcing myself to read it. Instead, I'd rather put it back on my shelf, class it as a DNF, maybe unhaul it at some point in the future, or maybe just leave it there until maybe I'm back in a high fantasy mood. I don't really know exactly the status of this book on my shelves in the future, but I know for a fact I'm not going to read it. So that's probably my least successful of all of my 5-star predictions. I think I'm now going to go from lowest rated to highest rated is the best way to do this. The first one is Once Upon a River by Diane Setterfield. Now the reason why I thought this was going to be a 5-star is because it's supposed to have a little bit of magical realism, a little bit of historical fiction. It's been talked about very highly and compared to other books on my shelf, like things like Station 11 that I personally really enjoy. However, for me this one just kind of fell a little bit flat. Like, none of the books on this list were bad reading experiences, but this one just didn't really grab me in the way that other people did. It tells the story of a young girl who basically a guy walks into this pub. It's historical fiction. Guy walks into this kind of pub or bar clutching what looks like a dead girl, and believes that he's like rescued her from the river, and then he essentially faints, and then it turns out that the girl isn't dead, but we're pretty convinced she was dead and maybe she came back to life, and then it's about her identity. And I was really hoping there'd be more magic from it, but really from that point on it kind of disintegrates into more of a family drama, like close-knit community kind of vibe, and for me personally there wasn't enough magic to carry it through. I really loved the writing style from Diane Setterfield. I think she's got a very lyrical, flowing writing style, which I was enjoying a lot at the beginning, but then when we got about halfway through, again, it just seemed like there was a lot of book for not a lot of plot, and that actually the lyrical writing style was covering a whole lot of lack of substance. So it's not that I didn't enjoy it, but I didn't enjoy it anywhere near as much as I was hoping I would. The other one that I gave a 3-star review to is The Suicide Club, and I can't remember the author's name, so I'll put it here. Sorry, I'm full of cold and a bit fuguey this morning. So The Suicide Club is it's like a dystopian fiction, speculative fiction set in the future where technology and healthcare has reached a point where people really aren't dying anymore, and various organs can be implanted in you to keep you alive for ages, and it's kind of got a weird healthcare system where you have points based on how healthy and like low risk you are, and then the more points you get, the more you get awarded. And the basic premise is the idea that people are committing suicide as an act of rebellion against this kind of state, sort of utopia but also not, that is keeping people alive. Now I actually read this one for the bibliotherapy sessions with Amy Gets Lit, which is kind of our very chill, relaxed buddy read slash book clubby kind of thing. I'll link my video down below where I talk about it in more detail, but basically it just was trying to do too much with not enough space and didn't really properly work into any of the ideas that it was talking about. You know, when you're talking about healthcare and human organs and the continuation and extending of the human life, in speculative fiction you could really take that down a lot of different roads. It never really went far enough in any of it, and I really didn't find any of the characters particularly compelling. So it was a 3-star because it gave me a lot to talk about and a lot to think about, but I was annoyed that it didn't work harder to talk or think about those things, basically. Another 3-star book was Marie Brennan's Midnight Never Come. Now, the reason why this was on the list is because Marie Brennan is the author of a book series called the Lady Trent series, which is about dragons, that I really, really enjoy. So I was hoping the fact that I love her dragon series would mean that I would enjoy this one. This is a fae or fairy story set in the Elizabethan court, and it is that there is a Fae Court basically buried underneath London, and it's how the two interact. So it's kind of a bit of magic and a bit of historical fiction. Now, my biggest issue with this book is that there was too much historical fiction and not enough fae. Clearly the author really, like Marie Brennan, has really researched the Elizabethan time period and the Queen Elizabeth's High Court and things like that, and there was a lot of detail there, but it was something that I personally wasn't interested in. And when she was making all these twists to add the fae into it, because my knowledge of Elizabethan court in general isn't very good, and I don't think many people's is, it meant that I couldn't like fully appreciate the little twists and nods that she was doing, and I just wanted to know more about the Fae Court in general, and I didn't feel like we got much information there. Felt like the world building was a bit sloppy, and then kind of everything wrapped up in a way at the end that I thought was very rushed, which was a bit weird. It was like super slow to begin with, and then everything got rushed at the end. And then as it transpires, this is part of a series, but book 2 is set like 100 years on and follows a completely different set of characters. So like, I'm definitely not going to continue it, and I'm annoyed because there's a whole load of loose threads in this that I don't think we'll ever get answers to. So I'm not continuing with the series. I enjoyed it in the sense that it was a 3-star because the bits of world building that were there were enjoyable, and Marie Brennan is like technically a good writer, but it just felt like it was lacking, and I think that my expectations were much higher because of how much I really enjoyed the Lady Trent series. So my 4-star from this list is Birdbox by Josh Malermann. I think the reason why I thought this was going to be a 5-star was because it had been compared to Heart-Shaped Box by Joe Hill, which is one of my all-time favourite books ever. I adore that book. It's probably like comfortably my favourite horror book. Birdbox, I don't know if I really need to tell you what it's about. It was very hyped last year, especially with the movie coming out, but basically you're not allowed to see because there's these weird monstery things that have invaded, and if you see them you go insane and you really hurt yourself. I read this all in one day, hanging out at the spa with my mum and my sister. Bit of a weird book to read at the spa, very gruesome and gory in places, but I really enjoyed the reading experience. I can't put my finger on exactly why it's a 4-star rather than a 5-star. Maybe I had more to say in the wrap-up closer to when I read it, but basically it was really enjoyable, but there was just something a little bit missing for me that didn't quite tick the box, which I know that's like the least helpful review anybody could ever give, but it's a really solid, really enjoyable book. So if you were vaguely interested in it in any way, I think definitely go and read it. And there are plenty of people out there for whom it is a 5-star, but there's something very like intangible and difficult to really latch onto about what makes a 5-star book for me sometimes, and this one just didn't quite have it. Now we have a huge collection of 5-star books. I think mine works out to roughly 50-50 of being either not 5-star or 5-star. I have 5 books that are all 5 stars, so that's excellent. So let's go down the list. The first one, is anyone really surprised? It's Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park. This is definitely where we now come into the realm of the fact that even though I'm a book reviewer and you know I have a presence online, as with many people, I'm a human being who has very subjective tastes, who has certain things that she really likes, and therefore will forgive a lot of sins if it happens to tick that box. And one of them, for those of you who aren't aware, is dinosaurs. I fucking love dinosaurs, which means this book was always going to be 5-star. Like, that's exactly why I predicted to be 5-star. That's why I've given it 5-star. I love the movie. The book was great. I mean, if I'm being 100% objectively entirely honest, the book is not great. The book has some weird rambly bits. It's a bit sexist in places. Doesn't really make a whole load of sense. It's a bit weird. I think the movie's a lot better in some ways, but equally, it's Jurassic Park. So therefore, I had a great time reading it, and it's 5-star, and there's nothing you can say to change my mind on that. In the same way that Jurassic Park 3 is objectively a very bad movie. However, it's one of my favourites ever, and I have a tattoo in honour of it on my leg. So with that all in mind, 5-star read. However, if you're not super keen on dinosaurs, maybe don't read this one, because if you're not into them, you're not going to enjoy it. Like, that's a given. Another excellent one was Love Minus 80 by Will McIntosh. So this is a sci-fi set in a world where tech has really exploded. We have these little flying screens that kind of follow everyone around. There's a whole lot of like imbalance in poverty, because of course there is, because it's kind of a sci-fi dystopian. But when people die, they can be brought back, and you can have insurance policies to bring you back. But if you die without one of these insurance policies, and you are quite cute and quite young and basically a desirable potential mate, mainly women, then you are put into the bridesicle place, and basically you're kept on ice, and then people can pay money to wake you up for 5-10 minutes at a time to get to know you, and then if they really like you, they can pay to have you revived, and then you're their wife. So very weird, dystopian, slightly horrific future. It is the story of a guy who kills a woman in a hit and run, and then it turns out that she is put into one of these bicycle places, and he starts to save up money to go and visit her to apologise, but then it kind of, a love story blossoms from there. This was just such a like fun, cool, weird, quirky book. I've never heard anybody talk about it. It's one of these ones that like definitely just sits on shelves for absolute years and like never really made any waves, but it's so good and like so interesting and quirky, and it's doing such like cool things in the sci-fi world. I loved the discussion with tech. I loved the agency and how much your life is your own. I thought the story between the two of them was really interesting. The whole kind of like feminist discussion about all these almost like mail order brides, but even worse than that because they've been killed and even in death they can't rest kind of thing is really, really cool and interesting. It's very well written. The only minor gripe I have is that it didn't end particularly strong, but I always feel like with dystopian fiction it's very, very, very hard to end it well. So because of that, I'd still call it a 5-star review. Like, it was such a cool, weird read, and I 100% recommend it if you are into speculative fiction or sci-fi or anything like that. Like, I think this is doing what something like Suicide Club was almost trying to do, but this does it in such a like way cooler way. Another 5-star review is Artemis by Andy Weir. This one was on the list because I really like The Martian, which is his other book, and I like space, so therefore it was onto a winner. So this is where we are on the moon, we've colonised it, and there's basically, it almost becomes like a thriller criminal heist thing, but on the moon. And that was what I really loved about it, was it was a thriller, but a thriller set in a very, very different way. There's almost like a pocket of subgenre space thrillers that I really enjoy and think they're very cool. I like the character. I listened to it on audiobook. I really enjoyed the main character. I enjoyed a lot of the twists, and I thought that the world building was very solid, and there was a lot, again, like with The Martian, there was a lot of really cool science in it that I'm gonna believe checks out because of the amount of research he did in The Martian as well. So if you're really into sciencey kind of stuff, and you like a little bit of a kind of thriller, but you find most conventional domestic thrillers a bit dull, this could be a really good one for you. And Andy Weir's writing just, it connects, it resonates with me. I think he's very funny and has a really light, relaxed style that I just personally really enjoy, so that's why this one's 5-star. Like I said earlier, the difference between a 5-star and a 4-star is so difficult to articulate, and so much of it just comes down to like what you personally are looking for in a book, and also what you're personally willing to forgive. So I don't know how meaningful this video is actually turning out to be. On the note of what you're willing to forgive, another 5-star, which hopefully you'll have seen very recently in my January wrap-up, is Positive by David Wellington. This is a zombie book, zombie post-apocalyptic fiction, where actually the zombies aren't really the big deal. The big deal is the humans that you meet on the road. There are a few cities that have some vague sense of, so it's been a good solid 20 years, maybe even 20 plus years since this big zombie outbreak. There's like second generation kids now. Population's been decimated, but cities have started to be able to rebuild. There is a government of some sort, and then there are also like pirates and looters out on the road, and it's beginning to kind of form as a society again. Now, the zombie virus is quite strange in this one, because it can lay dormant in the body for up to 20 years. So if you've been potentially exposed to it, there are camps that you get sent to basically live out the years that you have waiting whether you're going to infect people or not, so that way the virus doesn't spread. This one really is like a commentary. It's kind of a survivalist book. We don't really interact with the zombies too much in it, but I really enjoyed the discussion it had about like what it means to be human, what you are willing to do and not do. At what point do you draw the line and say, no, everybody else has sunk to this level, but I am going to be the one who upholds good and a moral view, and isn't the one, like, eye for an eye is not a valid way of doing this. I thought there were some really fun characters. It's a little bit sexist in places. There are some really awesome, badass, strong female characters, but then there are some like super token motivators for the main character, just placeholders to get raped and abused in the corner. So it was a weird mix of like, I like her and you're doing some good work with her, but oh, those four over there are problematic. It had a bit of a Mad Maxian kind of feel to it in places, as to like being on the road. Just generally, I think it's a solid example of zombie fiction doing all of the things that I really love. Like, I love survivalist fiction. I'm a sucker for a post-apocalyptic book. I've got one more to read on my shelves, and then I'm going to do a whole video about some of my favourites, because I've read quite a few now. And this just ticks the box for me. Like, it's not objectively amazing, but if you like survivalist post-apocalyptic fiction, this does it really bloody well, and I'm super here for it. So 5 stars. And then my final one for this video is Kintu by Jennifer Nansubuga Makumbi. This is a really cool, based in Africa, slightly sci-fi but not really, slightly magically but not really, don't really know exactly how to describe it, epic tale as such. And basically it tells the story of a gentleman called Kintu, who is a tribe leader, and he triggers a curse, and then this on his whole family, and then it follows several generations going down the line of how the curse has impacted various people. Now, even with this curse thing going on, there aren't actually that many references to it, and not a crazy amount happens. It's just these like weird pocket snapshots of different people's lives in Uganda, and talking about some of the kind of political history of Uganda. It's just history and culture in general, interactions between some of the different tribes and cultures within Uganda, and then also this added kind of element of a curse type thing over the top. I really enjoyed the snippets. There wasn't any one character who I liked any more than the other, and I thought that their voices were really strong. And then it does have quite a fun bit at the end where it all does come together. And I know some people have said that they didn't like the way it came together at the end, but I personally found it really weirdly satisfying. And yeah, it was one that it caught me by surprise, and again, I'm really struggling to put my finger today on what resonates within these books, but I really enjoyed it. I love the writing style, and I found it a really fascinating, riveting, very engaging read, and I blitzed it in like a night. I just kind of sat and finished it, and it was wicked. So definitely recommend this one. So that's it. So pretty good, I think, at guessing some 5-star reviews there. We had what, 3 3-stars, 1 DNF'd, 1 4-star, and then 5 5-stars. So like 50-50 as to being able to do it and not, which I think is kind of interesting. I think my next round is going to be slightly better. I've thought a little bit harder about a few of the books in it, but yeah, I think the more I'm on BookTube and talking about books in a semi-critical manner and things, the more I realise that really, especially when it comes to fiction, I struggle to identify what makes a 4 or 5-star read. Like, I know what I like in books and what I don't like, but I don't really know how to articulate what I really like compared to what I just like. And honestly, I think my rating system's kind of a bit of garbage. So I might do a whole discussion video at some point about the fact that my rating system is total garbage, very subjective, very inconsistent, and probably filled with a bunch of hypocrisy. Let me know down below if you would like to watch that. But yeah, so I'm now going to go and film my 5-star predictions for the next round, and I'll chat to you soon. Have a wonderful reading week. Bye now.